Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge, and welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And it's a little early today. We had to make space for others and move some things around for our guests, but I'm really excited to have them. I'll get to that in a second. Just want to give a shout out to thisent.com, who's kind of helping me look at the data and start to publish the results about all of these interviews we're doing. To us, this is customer validation. If you know the lean startup models and the business model canvas, what we're doing is trying to see what makes entrepreneurs, creatives, innovators, activists, the community members tick. To that end, I've also started Every Damn Day TikTok style, which is a 60-second video that summarizes some of the data. And we're starting slow. We're starting with things you guys already know, but check the Fledge out on TikTok. All right, my guest today, Mr. Justin. How you doing, man?
Doing well, Jerry. Doing well.
So you got a pretty packed schedule. You had a one cancellation and you gave me 30 minutes. So we got a cruise, huh?
Absolutely. Well, that's just called high maintenance. And I pretend to be busy because it makes me seem important, right? That's really what it is.
Is it?
No, it's just a busy week.
Well, I bet it is. I mean, you've got everyone's graduate. Well, let's talk. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the Lansing Promise. But let's start with you for a minute. Where were you born and raised? Where'd you go to school? And what kind of brought you to what you're doing right now?
Let's do it. So born and raised here in Lansing, Sparrow Hospital. Grew up on West Shiawassee Street. Actually was on Eureka for a minute.
Yeah.
Then, so first half of my life, West Shiawassee. Went to Montessori Children's House on St. Joe and then to Verlinden for 4th and 5th grade. So I was a little red. We used to stop at Harry's every day and get a dill pickle and a pack of Big Red. And then you have to eat the pickle and then do the whole pack of Big Red and then just keep walking. And so from there, we moved to Waverly in 6th grade, which was a culture shock for me. I actually thought I was a light-skinned black kid for the first 12 years of my life. Imagine my surprise. It turns out, Jerry, I'm Irish. So I'm what I mean, and you know this well, right? What Lansing does better, in my opinion, than any place I've ever seen in this country is that it's about people, right? And it's about community. And color does matter because it's beautiful, right? But reality is race and color really, when we see each other as people, right, becomes something that adds to the quality, right? It adds to the diversity of sorts, but more importantly, it's about where you're from, right, and where you're at, right? Not necessarily what you look like.
Are you starting to quote EPMD?
Well, we'll quote whoever we need to.
So, I got bused to Riddle in the 70s. So you would know where that's at over by the west side there. And it's funny, my son put an offer on a house on West Shiawassee just yesterday. So hopefully he's getting it. It's a hard time to buy a house right now. So, which I think is a testament to how great our community is. I just love the diversity, like you're saying. I've got a poem from this. He must have been a 5th or 6th grader when he wrote it, and it's called Color, and it talks about separating us all into black and white, and he doesn't see anybody who's black or anybody who's white, and he wants his life full of color, and it was almost exactly like the same theme or tones what you were saying.
Yeah. That's right.
So
and there's a balance, between, being colorblind, right? Which as a white male, right, I have to be careful about, right? There's been a lot of conversation, around the country, right, about the understanding, the importance of recognizing the statement, right, and the truth that Black lives matter, Black and brown lives matter, right, which is a critically important statement. Within that, of course, we say, well, but all lives matter. Well, yes, but disproportionately, our Black and brown brothers and sisters are being more affected, right, are being more disproportionately affected. So it's been an important balance to say color matters in that it is beautiful and diverse and vibrant and lovely and rich and full, right? But how is it that we all bleed the same? And so I think it's been an interesting an interesting year. And I think what this city and what this country really needs more than anything now is healing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room in the middle. We're polarized. We got to start reaching across and trying to fix some things. And, I know people think they don't see it sometimes because it's so extreme. And I'm not saying you have to go make up with your uncle right now because he's a Trumpster or whatever, or the flip flop around. But let's start reaching across a little better, I think. Super important. Let's talk about what you do. So Lansing Promise is what's on the title of the show, but you might do other things too. So let's start with the Lansing Promise, but tell us some other projects you do as well.
Sure. All right. So I'm executive director of the Lansing Promise. That's the day gig there for the last 5 years.
We're hitting
listed on a handful of boards. I run a small sort of referral-only legal practice for nonprofit organizations across the city, and do the various tax-exempt work, and actually have been able to work with some of our scholars as of late to help them build their businesses, right? To build their LLCs, and to help them understand some of the legal context. So I'm an attorney by trade, but a social worker. Do we have a snag?
We've got a little bit
Jared,
of.
I said everything good already, so we're good.
Yeah, we are hitting a small snag in the tech. You're freezing up, but your voice isn't. So let's keep trudging through it.
Yep.
And that's interesting. I didn't know you were an attorney. That's the first time I've heard
when
this.
I need to be.
So when you need to be, which is that seems like would be super useful. I wish I was an attorney sometimes when I needed to be, but I try to represent myself, and then I'd be a fool, right? So it's within that piece, right? So we're doing a little bit of legal, and we do a little bit of nonprofit work. We do a little bit of the business work, and then actually something that I've had the privilege of doing for the last year and a half has been being El Presidente, as we call it, of Leadership Lansing Collective. So for those not familiar with Leadership Lansing, it's a program through the chamber that draws together 25 to 50 folks a year to go through sort of a training program around the city. And I'll tell you this, Jerry, it was probably one of the most encouraging things I've done in several years, because I learned that I'm not alone in my love for this city. And in fact, there's a whole lot more folks, right, that love this city. And so the more that we begin to reach out, right, and build networks and build real relationships, I think we're beginning to see that this city is full of folks doing incredible work. And the only question is, how do we weave those threads together? Yeah. So, we're going to talk about how much we love this city a lot. I got a sticker on the back of my computer that says Lansing raised me. And I always, coaches, teachers, mentors, business owners, my parents, my family, just so many people had to come together to lift me out of poverty and get me to U of M and get me graduated from U of M. And I give all the credit to all those types of people I just named. And what you're doing with the Lansing. So 2 things, education, entrepreneurship. Both of them have inequities in them, right? When we're talking about Black and brown folks, and that's the very first time I ever said folks. You guys are making me switch my language. Now I don't know about that, but we'll examine that later. So I want to start with the entrepreneurship, though. Can you still hear me? Because we are getting a little snag again. Yeah, we're back. On the entrepreneurial side, forming an LLC, I mean, that's what you were talking about, right? You do that for some of your clients.
Yep.
What is your demographic that you're working with? Is it mostly white people that are starting the businesses that you work with? Is it mixed like the city is itself, or what are you seeing? And where I'm going with this, just so you don't feel like I come at you sideways in any way, is that disproportionately people of color are not sometimes eligible for business grants, business loans, business whatever, because they don't form that LLC. They might think they have a DBA, but they don't understand it, or and this goes across to all entity races, that people don't understand entities and all of that. But it definitely, in Black and brown communities, there's less LLCs, there's less DBAs, and therefore less resource available. So what do you see in that space?
That's the right question. I'm going to take it from two different fronts. So let's go first from the legal practice, right? Which again is not a ton of my work. It's a client or two at a time. Mm-hmm. Those have mostly been, it's been pretty blended. It leans a little more heavily melanated than not. Because when we catch the vision, right? When we catch the vision of entrepreneurs, and to be honest, especially of our scholars. So I'll break down Lansing Promise in a few minutes, I'm sure. But every single one of our kids, as far as I'm concerned, will either be an employer, an entrepreneur, or a successful careered employee, right?
Yeah.
Those three aspects are, we need every single kid to be employed in some way, shape, or form. Of course we do. Now, it might be that they employ themselves, right? So let's break out the entrepreneurship for a minute, right? We know that not everyone's built to be an entrepreneur, but everyone should be thinking entrepreneurially, right?
That's right.
And so I think, right, when we set expectations generally for our kids, right, when it comes to the promise, and again, I'll break it down in a minute, we're beginning to talk pretty young about what it looks like to build careers, which is really what we're focusing on. Kids need jobs, yeah, but they need careers, because careers is how you raise a family. Jobs, how you pay some bills, right? A career is how you find satisfaction, right? Emotionally, socially, relationally, personally, spiritually. And so as we've built out careers, a number of our students, a number of our scholars really coming out of Lansing are saying, I want to build a business, or I started a business, but where do I start? Now, what we're going to be working on, and we're talking with LEAP, so we're talking with Tony Willis and the crew there. We're talking to a couple other organizations that are doing this work. Jerry, we're going to be talking to you, so here we go. How is it that we make sure that every single young person in this city who becomes a young professional who wants to build a business, they can go somewhere and that there's no wrong door, right? Which is what you guys preach at the Fledge, right? There's no wrong door to get this stuff started. But how is it that we set a baseline for at least baseline legal understanding, baseline HR, because good night, HR is not easy, right? Baseline tax and finance implications, right? To what it means to run a business. If we can ensure there's at least a baseline for all those things, right, then at least we're making informed decisions based on all the facts. Your point's a really good one, though, as we've been talking through the impacts and the disproportionate impacts or disproportionate representation, right, within leadership, right? So within the boardroom, right, at sort of the largest corporations, within the C-suite or the executive suite, and even with ownership within smaller organizations. It is not always as melanated as I believe should be. It is certainly not melanated to the degree that our community is. And so the question for real, true representation is an important one. Part of it has to do with access, right? So it might be access to legal counsel or otherwise. Part of it, and what we're beginning to hear more and more, is if I can see it, I can be it, right? But if many of our young people, if the representation they see of successful Black or brown men, for example, now, as a white boy, I always got to be careful with this, but as a father, I'm going to make this statement. Our young men in particular look to older men, for example, to see what they could be and to see what either they want to be or don't want to be, right? Because we emulate, right? We have expectations for ourselves that are set by others. And then we begin to set them for ourselves, right? So as we begin to walk down this piece, what I continue to hear more and more is, well, I didn't even know that was an option. Right, I have a couple of board members who are incredible, who have been explaining to me, and specifically one who is, let's just say, rising quickly in corporate America here in Lansing. And he said, Justin, when I was young, no one looked like me in an office setting. No one looked like me in the C-suite. But what happens when our young people meet business owners who look like them, community leaders who look like them, folks in the C-suite, and folks running businesses, generally, folks doing anything that they do, teaching, right? Being a principal. We have some incredible teachers and principals that sit representative of our kids and really love our kids. But what does it look like when we as a community begin to rally and ensure that every young person who wants opportunity or access to school or training gets it. They want access to entrepreneurship tools, right, and trainings, gets it. And they want to begin to understand what it even means to be a part of a community, both from a business side and an entrepreneurial side. If that happens, which you all are already building some of that, we do begin to see at least a little more equity. Now, equity from my end as an attorney is shareholder value. Now, that sounds different for a second, but when we talk about equity, let's go to a corporation for a second, right? Shareholder value is both ownership and risk and responsibility they're shared, right? There's one thing to invite our kids to a table that says, hey, come be an entrepreneur with us, and we're going to feed you all this stuff and good luck. And then there's another thing to say, hey, there's a table here and it's missing an entire chunk. This table is not complete until you are here. And you will be bringing this piece of wood into the table and we will glue it in. And now we are all one unit. You are responsible for this table just as I'm responsible for this table, right? So you will benefit from this table as much as I benefit, and you will lose from this table as much as I lose, right? And imagine if there's this equitable piece, because number one, what does that do for us who do have some established businesses or established community or established whatever? It means that we are now tied and our futures are tied directly with our young people that we've invited in, which is critically important, right? Because if we believe in the inherent value and worth of every young person in this city, then we do need to invest accordingly. And if our young people struggle and fall down, then we need to help them back up. And if we fall down, we're going to need them to help us back up, right? So the culture of entrepreneurship, I think, within this city has only scratched the surface of what it can become, because we know there's inherent risk in entrepreneurship. Just as there's inherent risk in driving a car, just as there's inherent risk in building a career or dreaming. But that doesn't mean that inherent risk should stop our young people from attempting or trying or failing, though I'm not clear that failing is a real thing, because if we take an opportunity to fall down, learn from it and get back up, did we fail or did we learn?
Right.
Right. But often I don't think we as a culture, let alone a community, have been able to lay enough groundwork yet for our young people to say, you know what, I'm going to go try. And you know what, if I fall down, don't worry, they're going to help me back up. By they, I mean the community around me, host of witnesses, whatever it is. The PPP loan, right? The Paycheck Protection Program is a really good example of what could have been amazing, right? But left a whole group of folks out. Yep. It was the folks that didn't have LLCs, right? Did not have formal entities, because they've always just been running their own shop, right? We call it a cottage industry, right? The cottage is the living room, right? And they started a little business, whatever it is, and they were running it successfully for years and years. All of a sudden, those businesses got hampered or impacted by the shutdown. And so had they had the LLC in place, to your point, they would have been eligible for some kind of protection or assistance.
Right.
Now, I think what we're going to begin to look at is how do we as a community make sure that for all those who want those resources, they're at least available. And I think that's an important question actually the Promise is beginning to look at, to say, how is it that we just secure the opportunities for our kids and then get them to the right place, get them to the Fledge, right? Get them to LEAP, right? Get them to the Small Business Development Center, get them to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Because it's about opportunity.
You know, I want to address a couple of things that you said, because I love what you're saying. And I love that when I think about our students and maybe being in the hands, not directly of you, but of the Lansing Promise, I'm really happy that you're the leader of this with the way that you're talking about it, for sure, or the way that you do it. It's more than just a talk. And, you know, we've been calling 2021 the year of vulnerability. And part of that is, in 2020, we learned how to be vulnerable, right? We had no choice. I mean, we all were vulnerable. We practiced it every day. I mean, a grown man crying's an okay thing now, you know, and it maybe, you know, 2 years ago it wasn't. And, or it wasn't in certain circles. And making space for others, actually, the shirt I'm wearing today is also one of our themes within that. Because sometimes you have to show that vulnerability. People are scared there's this little pie, and if we let, you know, too many black and brown and poor people in, then they're going to take a bunch of the pie and I'm going to lose my piece. And but you got to be vulnerable, because when you're vulnerable, that's when you fall down. That's when you're lifting weights and you don't feel as strong. And strength comes from that vulnerability. And then we eliminated the word failure, except for one phrase we use is fail forward fast, but it's succeed or learn.
Like that.
It's succeed or learn, even within that fail forward fast. So I love what you're talking about here. I don't know. Tell us what the Lansing Promise is in case people don't know.
Sure.
And yeah, I've got some more questions about it too after you start going, if you don't answer them. So.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll break it down and let's dig deep. So the Lansing Promise, from its roots, is a place-based scholarship for every kid that lives in schools within the Lansing School District boundaries. So what does that mean? In 2012, there was a concept actually that was built on a primary concept. For those that may be familiar, the Hope Scholarship, helping other people excel, was started in 2001. The first class was inducted, and from there, the first class was given funds in 2007. The idea was the same. What if Lansing's young people, if they live within the Lansing School District boundaries, they attend a school within the boundaries, and at that time go to LCC, now with the Promise, go to LCC, MSU, or Olivet, could we as a community commit to at least helping remove or reduce some of their financial burden? Right? So if a student lives within the Lansing School District boundaries from 9th through 12th grade, if they attend a school within the Lansing School District boundaries from 9th through 12th grade, public, private, home, charter, GED, and if they graduate, of course, which we expect for all of our young people, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then if they go on to LCC, MSU, or Olivet, then they're eligible for the Lansing Promise Scholarship. So that's where we began. The scholarship is up to $6,500. Now it's, as you guys may know, college, career training, skilled trades training, all the cool things you can do at LCC and especially at MSU and Olivet, it ain't cheap. $6,500 does get you 65 credits at LCC, right? Which is an associate's degree. So essentially it's at least baselining. It's a good start is what we're saying. We know there's additional costs, and we're certainly not closing our eyes to these things. What we're actually attempting to do now is to say, how is it that we help our scholars, our young people, begin to not only move forward through tuition, so we help with the tuition gap, but how do we help them move forward even more so, right? Because food, clothing, and shelter, turns out, help you learn. Access to technology and transportation, help you learn. Emotional, relational, spiritual health, help you learn. Pieces really going to be honest about what whole people like and what value of like our young people need all of those pieces. And so we as a community are beginning to look at how is it
losing Justin a little bit there, freezing up.
There we go. Am I back?
Yeah, you are back. Vocally, you're back for sure. Yeah. Now I see motion. So I think we're good. Am I frozen?
In case folks can still hear me, I'm going to keep rolling. Jerry, stop me when.
Oh, we just lost you completely. Could be because your phone rang or something like that, which is usual the case. But while Justin's dealing with that real quick, I want to add in there about, I think that, with school of choice, and I really think I should wait for him on that one. Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh no.
Good.
Okay. Let me just tap in.
Internet.
So yeah, it'll be all right. So with when school of choice happened, and it seemed like there was exodus of some schools, like I don't know the whole dynamic, because I was actually unfortunately, I think, living in Grand Rapids at the time and working over there and doing some work there. And it just seemed like the Lansing School District lost a lot of resource there, and they lost a lot of the what I would say was a competitive advantage, because when I went to Lansing Eastern, I had one of the best high school educations in the nation. The teacher of the year, Mr. Spagnolia, I quote him still today. And, is this starting to restore some of the faith in the community that might have left Lansing school districts and coming back? Is it giving you a competitive advantage against Grand Ledge or against Williamston or whatever? And I'm not trying to pick on anybody.
Oh, right. Well, Jerry, you're asking a really important question. So the answer is yes. Number one, this has given a competitive edge. How do I know that? Number one, we've had more than 1,400 Promise scholars under scholarship since we started. We're accepting another 240 new scholars from this 2021 class, and we're still keeping it open. Now, normally it would be closed a month or two ago, right? But we're in pandemic world. If our kids are ready to move forward, then we're ready to move with them.
Awesome.
Right? So we're gonna expect another $600,000 or $700,000 that we're gonna invest directly into gap filling scholarships, which will leverage millions more. And the reason I say all that is because I've had so many calls from parents who said, well, if I had only known that there was a scholarship in a community waiting for my child, I wouldn't have moved him out of Lansing. That's a powerful statement.
Yes, it is.
Right? Because if it's just a scholarship and something that happens afterwards, then maybe the education wasn't so bad. Right? Now, I knew how everyone should parent, and I knew how everyone should raise their children and how they should educate them until 10 and a half years ago, the day that my daughter was born. The day that my daughter was born, everyone's opinion is irrelevant to me on how I parent, right? So I do not pretend to tell folks how to parent. But what I can tell you is this. We have a soon-to-be fifth grader, a soon-to-be second grader, and a soon-to-be kindergartner all in the Lansing School District. And they are getting a very quality education. Actually, these teachers are more patient than I could ever be. Oh my goodness. When I just watch them online, I'm like, ooh, I might have lost my patience there. But she's not. She says, okay, friends, let's bring it back. I appreciate that, but let's bring it back. It's the work that our teachers are doing in Lansing is pretty incredible. The passage of the Pathway Promise bond, right, which was an infrastructure for what is a career and college readiness sort of plan, right? So the Pathway Promise is every single grade level has career and college opportunities, field trips, exploration, engagement, and eventually opportunities, right, at every single grade level across the entire district, right? What does that do? That begins to set expectations. But in 2016, a $120 million bond was passed with flying colors, right? A couple years later, another $90 million bond was passed. No, $70 million. But what does that mean? I'll tell you this. I've actually met with a couple of developers who are big supporters of the Promise. Jerry, they said in particular, as soon as that bond passed in 2016, they knew that the priorities of Lansing were their kids. And they were able to double down on investments. Now, that's a strange way to come at it, right? Because weren't we just talking about education and community and hope? Mm-hmm. But what happens when people begin to believe? Belief and hope become contagious. Here's another important statement, right? Back when you were going to school, GM had what, 30,000 employees, right, in the region, maybe even in the city. LSD had 30,000 students. GM has, last I knew, 7,000 to 8,000 right now, maybe, employees, right? Just automation and technology, right? Moving forward. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the district has, what, 9,000, 10,000 students. And while there's not a direct correlation, right, it was actually, it's been a couple of folks that have really cast that vision for me, but it was our beloved Mayor Hollister, who said, Justin, just bear in mind, there are more forces at play, right, than just whether the school is doing a good job or not, right? Now, is there always room for improvement? Sure. Right, the new superintendent, Ben Schuldner, right, I literally just got off a meeting with him this morning, has some visions for increasing graduation rates to incredible rates. We're all in, right? Yeah. He has visions for increasing the numbers and, more importantly, making sure that parents are engaged and ready to learn and grow with their kids. We're all in, right? Yeah. If we just do those two things, the Promise is in. Because if we believe in that inherent value and worth of every young person in the city, then we believe in it well before they've even started school, right? Let alone when they're in kindergarten, let alone when we're moving through 12th grade, let alone when they're graduated. right? But what happens, Jerry, if, well, there's an author by the name of Wes Moore, who's an education advocate, and he's a veteran and a Rhodes Scholar, and ran the Robin Hood Foundation for a while, and does incredible work with first-generation students on the East Coast and across the country. He wrote a book called The Other Wes Moore. In that book, Wes Moore, the author, in the same paper, actually, same newspaper, was reported as a Rhodes Scholar. There was Wes Moore, similar upbringing, similar situation, similar neighborhood, similar risk factors, right? And we've all got risk factors. Let's just be real on that. We'll talk about vulnerability and my depression and anxiety if you want to after this. But we've all got risk factors, right? But in the same newspaper, they were both recognized, right? One was going to be doing time for felony murder, and one was going to be a Rhodes Scholar. Different outcomes. Wes Moore, the author, created a relationship or reached out to Wes Moore, who was then doing time. They built a powerful relationship. Wes Moore, the author, asked Wes Moore, then doing time, he said, Wes, are we products of our environment? And Wes so wisely stated, we're not products of our environment. We're products of our expectations. So then we have to ask ourselves, where do expectations come from, right? Are expectations only internal? Or let's break it down to social work. I mentioned I'm a social worker, right? I was raised by 2 social workers, so you can't get rid of it. In child development, expectations are set by identity. Identity is set by the world around us. So it matters how teachers talk to our kids, and how parents talk to our kids, and how grandparents and uncles and aunts talk to our kids, and how police officers talk to our kids, and how store owners talk to our kids, right? And how folks who run nonprofits like you and me talk to our kids. It matters. It matters that our kids understand that they have value and worth. It matters whether we have humility or not, right? It all matters because expectations are set at a young age. They grow, they change. But imagine if every young person in the city had expectations that, of course, I'm going to be successful after high school. The only question is, what am I going to do first, right? And am I going to go get my skilled trade and earn while I learn? Am I going to go be an electrician or a plumber or a dentist? Right? Or fill in the blank of whatever I'm going to do, that end game, I'm going to go be that. Or am I going to go be a business leader? Am I going to go build a business? And am I going to have a side hustle while I do another thing I love, right? Which I have the privilege of doing, right? The thing I love is Promise. And I have the privilege of running a side hustle at one client at a time, right? What a privilege.
Yeah.
What a privilege. So what happens if every kid begins to see that and says, oh, I could do that. I could try that. Now I just got to figure out what I want to do and what my next step is. That's a different conversation than if I'm going to do it.
But
I think is how we build.
I got a million questions about this, but some of them I actually want to save because you and I are going to meet at the Fledge in a week or 2. I can't remember the date exactly, but it's on my calendar and on yours. But oh man, I just. I thought you were going down a route where we use a quote quite often that says, genius is lost in poverty. And I thought you were going to start to talk about that a bit because that is one of my war cries, if you will, because we're sitting in Lansing with 27% of us living below the poverty line, which I think is 1 in 4. Well, definitely 1 out of 4 kids are in poverty. I love the correlation with the GM and all of that, because I do think we bet too much on GM for 150 years or whatever. I know it's not that long, but it seems like it. My family worked for the state or worked for GM, period. That's the only, if they worked, that's where they worked. And I love what you're talking about. And you went right into graduation rates and you went right into improving the schools outside of the Promise itself. I love that this is a holistic look at educating our kids. I also believe we make our kids do things they're not born to do. We get them set up for a particular industry, and we turned them into products somewhere in the 80s as we were doing quality circles and quality management, and everybody's now a component within the system. Right. So now we've got we need tech guys, so everything's going to be focused on tech, and now we need insurance, or we need welders or whatever. And it's just selling our kids to industry without letting them play, without letting them fail, without letting them succeed or learn. And I love that you're at the helm here. And I can't wait till you come talk with me.
Well, Jerry, let's dig one step further if you're okay with it, because I'm going to tell you that we're being asked by industry and by corporate leaders, and I'll say this: the corporate folks that we work with, woo, they're dope, right? All these folks, get my giant shout out board here. Every single one of these companies has invested in the Promise in some way, shape, or form, to the degree that they not only believe, but they're working to build talent, right? Mm-hmm. Not just cogs in a machine, but talent. Because talent looks at inward value, right? Talent looks at inward skill set. What does a young person who is valuable bring to the community or bring to the corporation as they become a young professional, right? As opposed to say, well, we need some cogs. Could you please put some cogs together and make sure they fit in the machine? And we don't really care about their quality of life, and we don't care. And that's not at least been the conversation with all the folks we're working with, which is incredibly encouraging. Because what we're building now, Jerry, is, we've talked a little bit K-12, right, about like inspiration and engagement. And there's so much more going on. And the folks in the district are doing a really good job. Terry Bernero is building out this pathway promise. She's got pathfinders in every single school. So it's a teacher or a counselor who's decided to commit a little more time and to be the expert in the promise, the expert in financial readiness, the expert in career engagement, right? Which is incredible, right? And they're already trusted, beloved people, because none of this works without trust, by the way. None of this works without relationships, and none of this works without people, right? But that's K-12. What happens?
That goes for everything.
That's exactly right. By the way. And it's not worth doing, right? If it's not worth doing without trust and people. And so K-12, right? Once they get into the Promise at 12th grade, then they're actually being wrapped around at LCC, MSU, and Olivet. LCC, MSU, and Olivet all have either an academic success coach assigned to our kid, or a neighborhood sort of champion assigned to our kid, or a staff assigned to every single one of our Promise scholars. So as far as we're concerned, they at least have that covered. But there still is, it's not a gap, but it's something that it's our responsibility, or we have the privilege to fill, which is this: talent development. So talent development, our kids are incredibly talented, right? But sometimes we need help with resumes. Sometimes we need help with interview skills. Sometimes we need help just with confidence, because we may even have the skill set, but we're like, well, I don't know if I should throw my hat in the ring there. I don't know if I could do it. Yeah. Sometimes you need someone in the background saying, you can do it. Go ahead, right? Or getting them matched in a career that actually meets their passions, right? Imagine if we were all actually doing work that gave us passion and purpose and didn't just exhaust us, right? These are the dreams that we're hoping for our kids, but these are also the dreams that our kids need to begin to internalize themselves. And so the Promise is not only going to be helping with education and reducing financial barriers, but we're moving to the next level, which is how do we make that talent lines up with their actual interests and they get into the businesses, corporations, or run their own business that speaks to them. And that's really the next level, I think, within this is making sure that our young people are not only get through K-12, they get through either undergrad or some kind of post-secondary, right? They get through a skilled trade, they get through a couple of talent pieces, and then they move into a career, right? That actually ultimately strengthens the community.
All right, so we got to hustle a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I'm
the
terrible.
Man himself, Chris Holman, just walked in, so
can't
be holding him up.
You let Chris in. Chris in.
Yeah.
Did you know, Jerry, that Chris is a big supporter of the Promise and is a board member of the Promise?
Well, he's got his wallet out, so I'm liking this.
Must be doing it.
The butterflies breathe.
So, hey, let us.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, let us
Chris Holman.
finish up.
Good to see you.
I got about 10 minutes left.
Help yourself.
You okay with that?
Yeah. I do have a noon.
Okay, we'll get rolling then. He's got to go, so I got to get rolling
Beautiful.
with this. So
Absolutely.
We're going to come back to this. I love, you're also addressing another thing. We don't believe that these kids in this neighborhood see believable opportunity. You can have I'm going to just talk. You can have the junior achievement show up, some white guy in a suit. You all can be accountants. And all of them are thinking, first of all, I don't want to dress like that. Second of all, I don't believe you. My uncle's not an accountant. He does just fine. He's selling Percocet off the porch, right? And this is what we're seeing, and these are the expectations. Right. So I like that. I like that a lot. And I also like what you're talking about with how us as a community need to be engaging with these kids, because I watch people treat these kids like shit, and it pisses me off. Man, it pisses me off. Have some respect for our kids. Those are somebody, if that was my kid you were talking to,
You just nailed it, Jerry. You just nailed it. What if every single kid in this city is yours and mine?
They
and
are.
all of ours.
They
Right?
are.
Exactly. Because they are our children. So anyone that talks junk about Lansing kids, you're going to have a problem with me.
Lansing raised me.
And exactly right. And you're going to have a problem with 1,000 or 10,000 more people. And that's the point, right? It's time for us to take responsibility, not only for ourselves, which is important, and we got to take responsibility for our family. Of course we do. But the question is, how do we define family, right? Are the kids that live to the left and right of me family? Are the kids that go to the school with my kids family? When I walk into a classroom, am I asking how more than just my son is doing or my daughter is doing? But I'm saying, hey, buddy, how you doing?
Yeah.
Right. And is it okay that he feels so safe that he can actually say, I'm not doing real good? That was a tough weekend, right? These are the kind of relationships that we as a community need to begin to build. And what happens if we actually begin to treat our young people as ours? We defend them, we protect them, and we provide for them. And what if you get 1,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 people doing the same thing, right? And let me just tell you this, good news, there's a whole lot of folks doing it already, right? I can't even begin to think about the amount of nonprofit organizations, community-based groups, neighborhood-based groups, the unelected mayors and mamas and grandmas of neighborhoods, right? There's a whole lot of folks doing incredible work, both in front of the camera, but also behind the scenes.
Right.
And so I think we always need to make sure, number one, this is happening. Number two, how is it that we continue to make sure this happens? And more importantly, make sure that folks have an opportunity to engage in ways that are meaningful to them, right? Because I think a lot of people have goodwill and they want to engage. They're just not sure where to start. And I think it's places like Fledge, for example, to me, that are a good place to start, right? And to engage and to go deeper, right? And Promise and Boys and Girls Club and Big Brothers Big Sisters and fill in the blank of organizations working for our kids.
So what's something you do every damn day to push this mission forward?
That's a good question. I mentioned depression and anxiety real quick. This job has not been easy over the last 6 years. I've learned that if I don't take care of myself, and that is starting first in prayer and spiritually and getting into scripture and getting into the Psalms, I'm not real healthy. I sit down with my wife every morning to have coffee. That's actually critical. And then from there, we've really been working to remind ourselves of why we do what we do, right? And so I think as we build this mission, it's really reminding us, and the question we ask is, right, so we believe in the inherent value and worth, right, of every young person in the city. I say it over and over because I believe it, right? But what does that mean? That means we imagine a community where every young person has that opportunity to dream, the ability to thrive, and then the love, support, and investment needed to build a brighter future. And that's for themselves, for their families, and for their communities. And so long as we're moving that forward, and as long as there's any organization moving that forward, that we can consider ourselves partners. And we're going to continue to move that forward.
All right. I'm gonna skip around a little bit and change up the show. I got one more question for you, or I've got one more thing for you. Tomorrow on the show, I've got Mama Cass. She was on the cover of the State Journal a week or two ago. She's huge on TikTok. She's hilarious. And she's got a really positive message and a really positive story. She actually they grew up with my daughter who passed of a fentanyl overdose. So I'm really happy that she had a different result. And you can read her story and all that. What question would you like me to pass to her?
So this is somewhat of a heavy one, right? But what does true community look like?
And I'm going to let you take us out with your answer to that.
I think we've hinted at it a bit today, right? It's, in my perspective, true community is, it's intentional and it's meaningful and it's seeing people for who they are, right? Recognizing that we all bleed and that we all put our pants on the same way and that we all don't have it all completely together, right? And recognizing that we all need a little more grace. I think a true community gives grace, leads with love, and doesn't back down from bold and brave conversations, ultimately to make sure that the next generation has everything they need to succeed.
I love it. we're going out with that. All right. All right, everyone.
Excellent.
Mama Cast tomorrow. Thank you so much, Justin, for taking time to talk with us about
you,
this. And yeah, every damn day at 2 p.m. And check us out on TikTok and check out the Lansing Promise. We'll put some websites up and stuff like that after I publish here. All right.
Beautiful.
All right. We will see you later.